Well, I'm about to earn my pay with you all today with one of the most profound slides I've probably ever put together in the history of all the messages that I've given here since I got here. Here it is. Winning is better than not winning. Right? There it is. This is why you pay me the big bucks, folks, okay? That right there. Winning is better than not winning. Now, let me tell you how I know that, because I have been a not winner a lot. And it is not fun. Not winning is not fun at all. And the thing is, I was thinking about this, we're pausing from our starting point series just to kind of do a one-off today, because I kind of figured half of y'all wouldn't be here, and next week is really, really important, okay? This is the culmination of 8 weeks worth of work we've been doing together on the starting point series. So make sure you come back next Sunday. So for those of you that did come today, God bless you. Thank you for being here on Labor's Day weekend and opening Alabama football game weekend, and you came to a new service time and you made it. So thank you so much for being here today. But we're going to talk about winning for a few minutes. And you all, growing up, if y'all were in Tuscaloosa for a long time, you may know a lot about winning. But there's some of us, the rest of us in the world, this is not a common thing for many of us. I've been a not winner a lot. And the problem is, I'm going to let you into my world just a little bit. I am probably the most competitive human being on earth, okay? I have to win. I love to win. I'm driven by it. In fact, y'all pray for me, because some of that's probably to a fault, okay? In fact, I was telling the staff this earlier this week. Sometimes when I know I can't win, I won't go. If I get invited to go out and play golf with somebody who I know is just going to obliterate me, I won't go. Invite me to go play golf with you, okay? Because I would do my best. But that's not what I mean. I love disc golf. Disc golf is probably my favorite leisure sport. And there's one of my best friends who, whenever he comes up here, he wants to play. He lives in Dothan. And if it wasn't for my love for him, I wouldn't go, because he just beats me like a bass drum every time that I go and play with him. It drives me crazy. I like to win. I think all of us really like to win, because winning is better than not winning. Now, some of you all lost complete respect for me when you heard how competitive I was, because you're not competitive at all. And I get it, okay? I 100% get it. I'm not wired like you. I'm a little bit different. I'm an Enneagram 3, if y'all keep up with any of that kind of stuff. So super driven, gotta achieve, gotta do more, gotta get there. Some of you are just not there, and that's cool, okay? 100% okay. Why am I saying this at the beginning of a message? Well, because this message is not just for the ultra competitive, okay? It's coming from a person who's fairly competitive. But what I'm going to tell you today from the life of the Apostle Paul and from really the way the Christian life works is something that all of us should be figuring out. Because winning is not just about competitive sports. Winning is not just about achieving great things and becoming an Olympic athlete, or beating Miami and making them look like they were a community college team or whatever else, right? Seriously. Now, can I just say really quick, I have never seen a quarterback more comfortable in the pocket than Bryce Young in my life. Has he been playing for 30 years? Where do you all get these people? Right? I don't understand where he even came from. It's insane. Again, non-football people, please. Are there any non-football people in Tuscaloosa? Why did I even give that disclaimer? Anyway, here's the point, okay? It's not just for competitive sports, right? So it's got the theme, and, we're talking about, I use this kind of as the analogy, and our production team did an amazing job putting together a really great bumper. But this is not just about competitive sports, okay? None of us like to feel like we failed or lost in anything, right? We don't like that feeling. And I'm going to guess that most of us in this room have felt it before. There's an element of our lives that when we lose, it just feels like something dies inside, right? Winning is better than not winning in everything. But there's one area that I want to talk about in particular today, and it's this. It's your life. In your life, winning is better than not winning in your life. Now, this leads me to a question that I want to ask you. And this is what we're going to wrestle with in the time we have left together today. Now, it's a question that most people never ask and consequently never answer. It's a question you've probably never asked yourself before. And therefore, when I bring it up, it might cause you to think, which is exactly what I want to have happen. But it's probably something you never asked yourself before and probably consequently never answered. And here's the question. What's the win? What's the win? What's the win in your life? In your life, in the direction that you're headed and where you want to end up, what's the win? There's something tragic that I've learned in my time of ministry, in the time of leading churches and leading small groups and doing men's ministry and doing all the stuff that I've done. And I know it's only going to continue to perpetuate and grow as our culture continues to shift the way we're headed. It's this. In the areas that matter most people never define the win. In the areas that matter most in your life, most people never define the win. And it leaves us kind of in this gap, because we live in a world where, we're surrounded with examples of how people are living their lives. And surrounded with examples of how people are either successful or they're failing or they're where we want to be, and that's what we want our family to look like. And that he's got the career that I want, she's got the family that I want, she's got the career that I want, whatever else, all those things. Okay, and we live in this world where we can, like, everyone's on display on social media, and I know it's just the best examples of us, and we filter the snot out of everything. Okay, but we live in a world where we see the examples of everyone else's life around us. And so we look and we go, well, I want my life like that, or I want my life to look like that. And the problem is, if you don't define the win, you're going to adopt somebody else's. If you don't define the win for your life, you're going to adopt somebody else's. And the goals in your life are going to look like your neighbor's goals. The goals in your life are going to look like your family's goals that are down the street that you don't really even know. You just think they look cool on Instagram. In the areas of your life that matter most, have you defined the win? Have you thought about it? And here's what I know, and this is from personal experience, and this is probably the deepest part of this, okay? But having been a not winner a lot in my life, a lot of the areas in which I've been a not winner have been places where I haven't defined the win. And I found myself running a race where I don't know where the finish line was. Have you ever felt like that? We call that the grind today. And so many of us in our careers, in our families, in the way we relate to our coworkers, or just life in general, we feel like we're stuck in the grind. We don't know where we're going, but we know we have to go. We don't know where we're going to end up, but we have to keep moving. We have to spin our wheels. We have to get up. We have to go to work. We have to do the things because that's what everyone else is doing. When we don't define the win, you're going to adopt somebody else's. Or you're going to wander around aimlessly until you burn out. Like, I'm not trying to twist the knife, okay, because I'm actually speaking from myself. I've been here and I've done that. And so I ask you again, what's the win? What's the win? Now, there's a couple examples I kind of want to throw up here, okay? Just for examples, just things that I can throw out to kind of drive my point home. But in the areas of your life that matter most, have you thought about what the win is? For example, in your marriage, what's the win? In your marriage, what's the win? What does it look like for you to win in your marriage? Do you know? I'm not picking, okay? I do a lot of weddings, and I love it. It's one of my most exciting things. But do you know, like most couples, when they sit down and I talk to them and ask what their win is, they don't say this out loud, but the basic win in an American marriage is, let's just not get divorced. Like, you don't look at each other, look, you don't say it out loud, okay, and you don't write it down, but when you come to the altar, that's not what's in your minds, that's not what's on your head, but like, you just like, our win is just not to get divorced, right? And like 30 years after you get married, well, I can't stand to see her coming, but by God, we never got divorced. So I'm not saying divorce is a good thing. That's not what I'm saying at all. But like some of us in our marriages, we don't think about this. We don't think about like where we want our relationship with our spouses to go, right? What are you hoping to get out of this? What are you hoping to be able to support each other in? Why did you get married in the first place? What's the win? And ours, my wife and I, we sat down and did this a couple years ago, and it's cheesy and it's silly. But really it's just we always wanted to be where the other person was. And if we could be where the other person was and still be happy about it, and I don't have a scripture for that, and there's other biblical things, okay, I'm not saying this at all, but I just wanted her to be happy when she saw me coming. And I want her to be happy when she sees me coming. I tease her, like, when I come in the garage, are you still happy when I get home? And that's something we've decided to stick with. That's one of the wins in our marriage, is that we don't hate each other, right? That's bare minimum, okay? That we actually enjoy each other's company. But what's yours? Right? It can't just be not to get divorced, okay? I mean, that's a worthy goal. I want that for you. But that can't just be the only thing. I mean, you've decided to do life together. And single people, just for the record, this kind of question should change the way you date. Because if you have a win for marriage, if you have a win for what you want your relationship to look like once you finally get married, you're going to date different. And if you don't, you're going to date like everybody else around, and you're just going to keep in the grind until you happen on someone you can tolerate, and then 20 years from now, you're wondering why you get married. What's your win? What about in parenting? What's your win in parenting? This one's a good one for me, because I know really early on when we first became parents, I was petrified. I mean, literally, and I'm not saying I'm not scared today. There are still things that terrify me, all right? And I wasn't just like I was petrified of like poopy diapers and stuff, okay? It was way more complicated than I was just terrified. Someone put a human being in my care. Somebody said, like, we're going to trust you with another human being. And they thought that was a good idea. And I was terrified. It just scared me. And so I remember talking to my wife. I said, what's our win? What do we do? What do I do with this? What do I do with this precious child? It's like glass. Where do I go? What do I do? And we had this conversation, and it took us a while. Okay, this was not like in the delivery room we had this conversation. This was, Caden was probably closer to 1 before we started kind of seriously talking this through. And we said, what's our win in parenting? And we started to wrestle it out. Now, here's the thing. Before that moment, we had the win that a lot of other parents have, and we don't say it out loud. Right? We don't say it out loud. We don't write it down because it sounds super shallow. But the only win we could come up with before we sat down and think about it is the one that everybody else usually has. And it's, we just want perfectly behaved kids. I mean, yeah, you can laugh. It's okay. We just want perfectly behaved kids. And the ones that are laughing are the ones whose kids are grown. And the rest of us are like, I don't understand why they're laughing. But that's what we wanted, right? We just want perfectly behaved kids. And somewhere along the way it became perfectly behaved, perfectly educated kids. And the problem is, neither one of those things are achievable, okay? Neither one of those things are achievable, but here's the scary part, okay? If we hadn't sat down and talked about this, we would have kept striving towards that. We would have. We would just keep pushing, right? And we'll put my thumb on our kids, and they're going to behave, and people are just going to say, you know what? Look how well behaved Drew's kids are, and awesome. And then when they grew up and turned 18 and got to go out, they would never want to see our faces again, right? Or perfectly educated kids. I'm just going to grind on my kids until they get every scholarship that's possibly available, and I'm going to get them out there, and they're going to go to the best schools, and they're going to be studying in their sleep, and they can sleep 2 hours a day, but then the rest of the time they're going to have their nose in the books, right? Because they got to achieve. Now, hear my heart, okay? I'm not saying that I want you to have bad behaved kids. I'm not saying I don't want you to have educated kids. That's not the point. The point is, I don't think those are the most important things in the lives of my children. I don't think those are the most important things in the lives of your children either. So, my wife and I sat down, we talked about this, and it's silly, okay? This one's really silly too, and we stole this from somebody else. It's not something that we came up with on our own. We read a book, and we just thought this was really great, and it's one among many things, but the big thing for us was we just want our kids to want to be with us and one another when they don't have to be anymore. We want our kids to actually want to be with us and each other when they don't have to be anymore. And so we said, well, can we build relational equity into our children's lives? Let them value us. Doesn't mean that I don't have rules. Doesn't mean that I don't care about behavior. It doesn't mean that I don't care about their education. My kids at the Oakley house still do their homework. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying that the deciding factor on how we were going to relate to our kids was relationship. We wanted a plan. We wanted a plan to parent our kids. Now, if you're still stuck in the mode of you haven't thought about this, and I see a lot of people kind of like, I see the gears turning, and that's a really, really good thing. I'm excited about it. Here's my question. How are you going to figure these things out? Like, what's the direction? And I have a gift, okay? Particularly for you all in the parenting realm of life, because right on the other side of this wall is a kids ministry that we've built here at this church where we want to partner with you to give you a plan. We want to give you a plan. And it's built by people who have struggled through this and had our own questions and had our own conversations about what we want with our kids. And we want to give you a plan. That's what happens over there every Sunday is we want to partner with you. And we have more and more and more opportunity to partner with you to help you win as a parent. There's some really exciting things that are come up in the next few months for marriage as well, especially if you're single or if you're married or anything in between. You've been married for 20 years, you've been married for 20 minutes, any of that. We've got some really cool stuff coming up in the next few weeks, a few months that we're excited to share with you too. But one more, just one more. What's the win in your finances? What's the win in your finances? Because a lot of us say things like, well, I want to be out of debt. I want to be out of debt. Like, that's it. Well, but how are you going to get there? What's that actually look like? Or, we've got nebulous goals like, when I retire, I've heard this so many times before. When I retire, we're just going to sell everything and we're going to buy an RV and we're just going to drive around to where all of our grandkids are. A worthy plan. A worthy plan. But how do you win? How do you get there, right? What's the plan? What's the win? What's it look like specifically? I heard somebody, I think they stole this from a movie. See if you can figure out what movie it is. But they just said that, they want the last check they write to bounce. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. If that's where you want to be, let's talk about the win a little bit. But we don't talk about this. We want to, we think we want to be out of debt, but then we spend money like water. Or we think we want to have control of our finances, but we do everything possible to not have control of our finances. What's the win? in order to kind of like shape this and give you something practical, because it's one thing for me to stand up here for 10 minutes and make us all feel really guilty. That was not my point, okay? Because we don't want to not win, we want to win. So I want to give you kind of from some perspective. And I want to do that by examining what I think is kind of a win statement in the New Testament. Now, the Apostle Paul did not call it a win statement. It's not like, he doesn't say, here's my win. But it's very clear in the way that he's talking that he has decided how God built him. He's decided what God built him to do. He's decided where he wants to go, and he has a plan to get there. And he lays it all out to the Corinthian church. And it's really amazing to see. And I can't wait to share it with you. Now, just quick historical nugget, okay? The Apostle Paul did not show up in history as the Apostle Paul. He showed up as Saul of Tarsus. This is really important for where we're going to go with the rest of Paul's life in the time we have left together today, because the Apostle Paul, as Saul of Tarsus, when he was first growing up, before he became a Christian and kind of changed his name, he was the Christian killer. And he stomped out he tried to find every church he could possibly find of people who were following the way, which was Jesus. And he stomped them. He wanted to end them. He wanted to make their church just go away. He was done. He said it was some sort of crazy cult, and he couldn't wait to see them get stamped out. He was there when Stephen was stoned. He went out and found every Christian he could find, and he arrested them, and he had them thrown in prison, and he was trying to make this end until he ran into the resurrected Jesus. And he went, uh-oh, I think I made a mistake. And he switched his complete life around. In fact, he had such a massive transformation. The Christian community thought he was joking at first, that he was lying about it. They didn't trust him. But then he became the Apostle Paul, and he went out and he started planting more churches than anyone else had ever planted before. Now, this is important for today, because when Paul lays out what the win for his life is, he's very clearly saying that it took him not winning to realize what his win was. And here's how I know this. Listen to what he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. For I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. Can you imagine this for a minute, being the Apostle Paul? And like he becomes a Jesus follower, right? And the church today is a lot like what the church was then, just let out all the bells and whistles. It's a community of people who want to follow Jesus, who want to learn, they want to know more. And then Paul shows up to speak to them, and they're like, wait a minute, aren't you the one that arrested my sister? Aren't you the one my brother's in jail because of you? Aren't you the one who I can't see my parents anymore because of what you did? And Paul's got to go through that. Everywhere he goes. Yeah, you're right. That was me. That was me. Now, what an amazing testament to grace and mercy that God would choose such a person to radically transform their life and use them to plant churches. But everywhere Paul went, saying that he was an apostle of Jesus, people go, wait a minute, aren't you Saul of Tarsus? Like, my brother will never be back home again because of what you did. And he has this tension in his life because of that moment. Now, here's what's really cool. There's a but in there. This is great. He says, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. I love this statement. I am what I am. I can't change my past. Now, God's forgiven me for it, and my sin has been cleansed, and I've been set free, but I am what I am. I can't change what I did, right? He's not trying to work harder to try to make up for the mistakes he made in the past. He's not trying to live into some piece of mercy that he thinks he's finally going to deserve if he does it the right way. That's not his motivation. And it can't be our motivation either. If you set out to go parent better because of the mistakes you've made as a parent in the past, worthy and noble goal, but that's not the best why for why you should start doing what you need to do. And he's clearly saying, I am what I am. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace to me was not without effect. In other words, he's saying, look, God didn't make a mistake on me. God did not make a mistake when he set me free and he cleansed my sin and he put me on the right path and he gave me a job. He did not make a mistake. It was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them. Now, part of me, being the competitive guy that I am, hears Paul going, see what I did? But I don't think that's really what he's saying. I think what he's actually saying is God knew the potential that Paul had. I think God knows the potential that all of us have. God knows the potential that you have. God knows the potential that I have. And through his grace, we can get there. But if we're striving on our own and trying to find other people's goals and try to live into other people's dreams, we will not get there. We won't get there. So, I worked harder than all of them. I outworked the whole lot. Now, he goes into his win statement to the Corinthians after he's kind of laid out this whole thing that, this is who I am, and I'm not changing it, and I can't change it, and this is what God's doing through me. So he's made it very clear kind of how he got where he was. And then he lays out what I think is his win statement. And here's what it is. It starts in the 9th chapter. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To win as many as possible. You remember when Jesus looked at his disciples, if you're familiar with the Gospels, Jesus at one point looked at his disciples and said, I'm going to teach you how to fish for people, right? To cast a wide net. I want to teach you to be sent out and to fish for people. I'm going to teach you how to draw them in and invite them to be a part of what there is going on here, to be a part of this kingdom of God. So he says, I am free and I belong to no one, but I've made myself a servant to everyone to win as many as possible, to go out and connect and tell everybody that I can find about Jesus. He went from the person who said, I want the church to end, to the person who says, I'll do everything I can to grow the church. I'll do everything I can to help people know who Jesus is, so that I can win as many as possible. Not for his own glory, not to like make himself feel cool, but because this is what he knew he was built to do. And he's not done. This is where it gets really kind of fascinating. He says this, to the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews, to which most of us go, well, wait a minute, you are a Jew. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Well, what he meant was, when he was around Jews, he was the best Jew he could possibly be in the room. He outdid all of them. Not to like glorify them, but to gain relational equity with them, because he knew that what he wanted to do was gain influence. He wanted to have the opportunity to share with them who Jesus was. And so he did everything he could to gain their trust and to gain their empathy. He wasn't being manipulative. He was just saying, look, I get it. I know where you come from. I completely understand. And I'm going to do my best to help you understand where I'm coming from. And again, he goes on, to those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those who are under the law. And it's kind of like convoluted, complicated language, but Paul's just saying, look, I was just trying to relate to the people that were around me and understand where they're at, understand who they are, where they've come from, so they can understand me. And then he goes on, to those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law. So he's basically saying, I didn't just go do whatever I wanted to do. I just did my best to relate to where that they were, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became the weak to win the weak. I become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. Now, look, this gets really convoluted, and it gets really like confused, because people say, well, does this mean Paul like sacrificed himself? He just pretended to be somebody else? That's not what he's saying at all. He's saying, I know my win. My win is to tell people about Jesus. And if I need to show myself as being in a posture of weakness and meekness to do that, I'm for it. If I have to show myself as the best Jew that I can find, I'm for it. If I have to lean into people where they are, I'm for it. Because my win and my goal is to save as many as I can. Now, I'm not telling you all of this because I think you should adopt Paul's win. I told you this because I want you to see how passionate he became when he suddenly realized what he was built to do. When he suddenly had a plan. When he knew what he was supposed to accomplish in his life. When he realized what he could do by the grace of God. So like, look, I mean, if you want to adopt this goal, awesome, okay? That would be amazing, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, can you imagine what your life would look like if you knew where you wanted to go? He had a plan to get there. I think it would look like this. That he knew how to navigate all the complications of life and all the people that were around him to get where he needed to go. And I think each of us kind of want that. Now, it looks like Paul's about to change the subject, but he's actually not. He's going to say something that I think is pretty profound. And he's drawing out kind of an analogy of something that everybody in that time would have understood, and I'm going to try to unpack it for you here in modern context. He says this, don't you know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Well, duh, Paul. Thank you for that. That's almost as good as my opening slide, right? It's almost as simple-minded as that. Yeah, only one person's going to win, but everybody runs. Why would he even bring this up? Well, here's what I think. When you're running a race, you line up on the starting line, and everybody you're competing with, you can see. I don't look like it now, but I used to run marathons and half marathons and track and cross country. I can prove it because you're not going to believe me. So check out this picture. So I'm going to stand for a second. This is me winning the regional championship in 2002 at Trumbull County High School. Number 1 is the fastest time I've ever run. Now throw that slide away because I don't want to see that anymore. All right, so here's the point. Here's the point. My favorite thing about cross country was it was kind of an individual thing that had team results. Right? It was an individual thing that had team results. When I lined up on the line, my coach would look at me. Coach Vincent would look me in the eyes and he would say, I need you to beat that guy. There's 300 people on the line, but I said, I need you to beat that guy. And I was like, okay, I got it. The other thing that I liked was I knew where it was ending. I knew where the finish line was. There would be like these paper like banners on the chute, right? And you would run through and you'd cross this painted line on the ground and you knew you'd finished the race. And as long as I went from the starting line to the finish line and got ahead of that guy, I did what I was supposed to do. I had a win. It was very clear. It was very concise. I loved it. Now, I liked winning and I liked being good and I liked the trophies and the medals and all the stuff. But really, I think the simplicity of it was I knew where I was headed, I knew where I needed to get, and I knew the one thing that I needed to do. And so when Paul says, do you not know that everyone in the race runs the race, but only one gets the prize? I think he's saying, look, you need a plan. Everybody needs a plan. And then he throws in this thing, run in such a way to get the prize. Run in such a way as to get the prize. I don't know how competitive you are. And if I tried to take my competitive hat off, the only way that I think I can kind of connect to this is, why would you want to do something aimlessly? Why would you want to run into your marriage aimlessly? Why would you want to run into your parenting aimlessly? Why would you want to run into your career or your finances aimlessly? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Why would you want to run into your relationship with God aimlessly? Why would you want to run into this gift of grace that you've been given aimlessly and not understand what God has for you? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Now, I'm not saying that you need to line up all of your friends on a starting line and you need to decide which one of them you're going to conquer. That's not what I'm saying. But if you don't think about the things that are standing between you and where you need to go, and it's not people, okay, it's usually personal obstacles. If you don't think intentionally about the things that are between you and where you want your win to be, you will not overcome them. And if God has built you for something amazing and He has a preferred future for you, which I really truly feel He does, you can't get there until you think about it. So why not run in such a way as to get the prize? Why not? Can you live into the future God has for you if you don't think about it first? I mean, maybe by accident, and I trust the Holy Spirit a lot. I'm not saying that, but wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be easier? Now, one more thing. He just kind of twists the knife a little bit. Everyone who competes in the games, and he's talking about these games that happen outside of Corinth, and it was like the Olympics, okay? It was like the Olympics, but it was a little bit smaller scale. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last. Here's what's great. Have you ever heard of the term sitting on your laurels? Right? Okay, so some nodding heads. What that means is it comes from actually this verse. Back in the time of the early church, back in the early 60s and 70s AD, they would have these games. And the prize for whoever won would be a crown made of laurel leaves. Right? Laurel leaves. I don't know about you, but if I boxed as hard as they had to or ran as far as they had to and somebody just handed me a pile of leaves, I'm probably not going to feel really good about it. But that's what they did. They handed them like this crown of leaves. And it's like, you're serious? You went into all this strict training and did all that stuff for this stuff that's not going to last? You know, for these things that don't actually matter? For this stuff that's going to fall apart and wilt and be gone? Like, seriously? So, I can relate to what Paul is thinking and feeling when he's writing these things down. So, he says, they do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Now, he's not talking about a golden crown, okay? This has been so misinterpreted for so long. I'm not saying that, God's going to reach out of heaven and He's going to put, an actual lasting crown on your head. That's not what it means. It means that what you're getting, the prize, the achievement, the thing that you get when you run the race intentionally is going to last a lot longer than just a pile of leaves. Think of the lasting impact that you can have in your children's lives by parenting towards a win. Think of the intentional, amazing implications you can create in our community by living towards a win. Think of what you can do in your marriage by living towards a win, by having a plan. And when we understand, like, look, if you're a Jesus follower, if you're not a Jesus follower in the room, this is really good advice, okay? And it's good stuff to think about. But if you're a Jesus follower, you understand that life is far beyond just the blip of life we get here. Like, our life is not bookended by a birth certificate and a death certificate. It's much larger, eternity is forever. And think of the lasting implications you can think if you think big picture about the things that you do. So, Paul takes all that, he sums it up together, and he gives us a therefore. And whenever there's a therefore in the Bible, you got to pay attention, okay? So whenever you read, look for this. But he says this, therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I struck a blow to my body and I make it my slave. And he's not trying to talk about like physical harm. He's saying, I brought myself into full alignment with God's will for my life. I'm not going to run around aimlessly like I don't know where I'm going. And I'm not just going to punch at the sky and hope that something good happens. I'm going to bring myself into submission to the will of God to move in the direction that He's called me, because that's going to take me where I want to go. And what power, what amazing self-awareness it must take to say something like this and mean it. Wouldn't you like that? If your win doesn't look like this, great, awesome, but what is it? If your life doesn't get shaped out like the Apostle Paul, fantastic, awesome, but what does it head towards? And wouldn't it be amazing to be able to say, I'm not running aimlessly. I don't fight like a boxer beating the air. I'm moving myself in the right direction. And for Jesus followers, you've brought yourself into the will and the submission of God for your life, the submission to the will of God in your life. How amazing could that be? But he's not done. One more slide on this. So that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. So he's not doing it for his own glory. So he's not doing it so he's going to get a crown on his head. So he's not doing it so that other people will look and say, hey, how awesome is Paul? In fact, I don't think that he even realized the implications and the impact he would have on us globally when he was doing what he was doing. If you'd have looked at the Apostle Paul and said, hey, listen, 2,000 years from now, everybody in the whole world is going to at least know your name and have read some of your words because you're going to write half of the entire New Testament, he would have went, really? Huh. Because that wasn't what he was out for. He says it right here. So when I've done what I'm supposed to do, when I've finished the race, I'm not going to disqualify myself for what God really had intended for me all along. Gosh, that's what I want to have happen in my life. I don't want to strive after something that I think is good. I don't want to I want to step back and go, I'm going to grab that because there's a guy that I really, I feel like he's heading in a direction that I want, and I'm going to make my family look like his family, and we're going to do that because I think he's going where I want to go. That sounds pretty aimless to me. Paul's like, no. God has a plan. And I've prayed it out, and I've thought it out, and I've reasoned it out, and I know where I'm supposed to go, and I'm going to run in that direction. Not aimlessly, not like someone punching the air, but intentionally in the right direction. So here's his point. Okay? His point is simply this. I'm going to prepare and compete as if my competition is lined up beside me or staying in front of me. I'm going to look at all the options. I'm going to look at all the variables. I'm going to look at all the things, and I'm going to compete as if I can see where I want to go and what I need to do to get there in every facet of my life. So here's my question for you all. Right? What's the win? And are you preparing to win? What's the win? And are you preparing to win? Are you doing what you need to do to make sure you win in your life, in your finances, in your parenting, in your marriage, in your job, in your education? Are you doing what you need to do to win? And what does that win look like? And are you running aimlessly? Are you a boxer punching the air, hoping to hit something? Or I don't know, this is an analogy from Kentucky, maybe it's down here, but my dad used to say a lot, you just look like you're throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what'll stick. But I don't get that. Why? Then you got to clean the wall. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. But some of us look at our lives like that. We're just going to throw it all up there and see what sticks. It's the shotgun approach to everything. Whatever the biggest hole is, I'll go through that one. It's not the way I think God intended for us to live our lives. Are you preparing to win? Now, here's some things that I think will happen. If you do this, if you decide to do this, if you make a decision to kind of move in this direction, here's some things that I can promise you. You will find it so much easier to say no to you when you know what the win is. How many times have you found it, and don't raise your hand, and don't nod, and don't start counting, okay? But how many times have you found it incredibly difficult to say no to yourself? You, unfortunately, have talked yourself into every bad decision you've ever made. You will find it much easier to say no to yourself when you know where you're actually supposed to be going, when you have a plan and you have a direction and you have some intentionality behind the decisions that you're making. And then, not to twist the knife and sound overly dramatic, okay, so please don't hear that in, but the truth is you only get one season. You only get one season. When I played basketball as a kid, I started playing basketball when I was in kindergarten. I played, this is maybe a Kentucky thing, all the way through high school. I played AAU ball. I did travel ball. I played through the summer. I was on basketball, golf, and cross country were my thing, and I just did everything. And if I messed up, if I felt like I really had a crummy season, the good news was I was just a freshman, or I was just an 8th grader, and I had the next season to get better. And I had the next season to get better. The truth is, you only get one first marriage. You only get one time, one chance to raise your kids. You only get one season. Right? So why would we want to run around aimlessly and waste the time that we have? Why would we not want to be much more intentional? If you want your kids, if you want to grow up and you want your kids to love Jesus like you love Jesus, then you need to make a plan to get there. If you want to grow up and have your kids love to be around you and want your grandkids to be around you, you need to make a plan to get there. If you want your marriage to last 20, 30, 40 years, you need a plan to get there. One of the most amazing things to me as a millennial is to be able to sit down with a couple who's been married for 45, 50 years and go, how did you do it? Man, I love my wife with all of my heart. I love her with everything that I am, but marriage is difficult sometimes. We all know that it is. You need a plan to get where you want to go. You need a plan to get where you want to go. One more thing. This is the biggest. When you win, the people closest to you win as well. When you win as a parent, your kids win. When you win as a husband, your wife wins. When you win as a wife, your husband wins. When you win financially, your family wins. When you win spiritually, when you make a covenant between you and God to be able to raise your family and to raise up the people around you, to be moving in the direction of God, the community wins. And when we as a church live into this mission to connect people to Jesus and others for life change, the world wins. That's the whole point of the kingdom. When we win, everyone else around us wins too. And I think this, my friends, might be the actual thing that's been missing from the church. This is the secret sauce that's been missing from the global church for a long time, is not understanding that we have kingdom implications in what we do. Again, if you're not a Jesus follower, that doesn't really apply to you all that much, and that's fine. It's still just a really cool message. But for us, this is not negotiable. This is not a negotiable thing. We're Jesus followers. We're being called to live into this life of telling other people who He is. And when we win at that, everybody else wins too. Let's look at it one more time. Let's put it all together. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. So will you decide to be intentional with the life that you've been given? Will you decide to be intentional? My favorite word in the whole world. With the life that you've been given. What's the win? What's the win? Now, as we close out our time today, we're not going to sing our final song. We're just going to dismiss you because I want you to think about this. And if you're going to go home and process this with a spouse or with a friend or a significant other, or you're going to go coffee with somebody or lunch with somebody, here's something to think about. Pick one area of your life and decide what the win is. Don't try to do 20 of them today. You can't process all that. But pick one. Marriage, finance, parenting, career, education, something. Pick one. What's the win? And process that out with somebody today. Pray about it with somebody today and see what God might have in store for you. Let me pray for you as we close out our time together today. Father God, I thank you so much for these people and this amazing chance, this amazing opportunity we have to be together and to realize that you've built us for something more. That through the power of your Spirit and through the work that you've done in Christ, we have been called into a preferred future. You have a plan for us. And so many times we just kind of bounce around aimlessly without asking what that might be or seeking that on our own or laying out what our win might be. And so God, as my friends in this room today and watching online, wherever they may be, are wrestling this out, I just pray that you will bless them with wisdom and discernment and clarity so they can understand where they want to go, where you want them to go. And that through your help and through the power of the grace of your Son, they can get there. So that the community and the world can be changed. God, we love you. We ask it all in the name of Jesus Christ, our precious, Lord and Savior. Amen. Thank you all so much for coming to TCAT today. God bless you. Have a really great weekend. Enjoy this long weekend. We'll see you next Sunday at 10 o'clock for the close of Starting Point.